Yeah, we announced this at the conference earlier this year. We've got a benchmark trial going on. Now, we're working with a company called FleetYr, and FleetYr is an organisation that's able to take in data from telematics. We've got about 30 councils on board already who are submitting their telematics data through to FleetYr. And what they're able to do is they're able to clean it, they're able to sort of make sense of it. And what they're doing is they're creating some benchmarks. So utilization is a big question amongst all the IPWEA members. How much is enough? How much is too little? So we're actually working on, these are some of the early dashboards they created, and they've done a lot more work since then. But you can see on the right-hand side how you've got a whole lot of different names there. So they're the different organizations that are participating in the trial when we first kicked it off. And the idea here is that you'll know who you are, and then you can actually see how you compare to other councils that are involved in the trial. So this is one on utilization they're working on. Another one's on driver behaviour here, which is a critical thing for fleet safety. You can see KPI, you can see speeding, harsh driving, excessive driving. So these sort of things, from your organisational point of view, you may be looking at these in isolation, but how well are you really doing compared to other organisations or similar organisations? And this benchmarking trial is a way that we're hoping to give IPWEA fleet community a way to tell whether you're actually as good as you think you are, or whether your organisation is as good as they think they are. And just the last dashboard I've got here is on emissions. So this is a big focus area for a lot of organisations as net zero targets start to loom large. And how's your organisation performing? So lots of work going on there with the benchmark trial. If you're interested in getting involved, you can contact myself, or you can reach out to Tim Hill directly at FleetYr. As I mentioned, we've got about 30 councils that are involved in the trial now. We're still interested in getting more people involved, and all we need is access to your telematics data, and then we're adding fuel card data and everything like that as well. But if you've got telematics and you want to be involved, reach out to Tim or myself. So that's it from a propaganda point of view. Thank you for listening me get through that component of the webinar. But here's what we're here for. We've got some great speakers today. And so I'm now going to hand over to Steve Williams from Komatsu. So Steve has presented at our conference before and several of our training days. So we're excited to have Steve back and talk about what Komatsu is doing from a telematics point of view with Yellow Plan. So Steve's the National Manager of ICT and Fleet Management at Komatsu. He brings a deep understanding of heavy plant operations and how telematics can deliver safety, productivity, and maintenance benefits in high demand environments. So he'll share a bit today about Komatsu's connected equipment. Then we'll hear from Kathy, and I'll give Kathy a brief introduction when we get there. But then after that, we're going to have a chat. We're going to have a chat with Jack from City of Darwin and Anthony from Forbes. And we've also got Kim Gill from New Zealand Police as well. So we're going to actually listen to what other fleet managers are doing. And that's going to be a really fun part later on today. So Steve, if you're ready, I'll hand over to you and you can get us started.
Thanks, Mark. I'll just start sharing a screen. All right, should be coming through there momentarily. Oh, nope, wrong screen. My apologies. Should get used to that by now. We are after that one there. All right. Nope. That really does not want to play ball this morning, even though I've already tested this morning. Let's go straight.
We logged on early and tested.
Let's go straight into the PowerPoint side of things there. So should have that coming through now.
Looks good.
Perfect. All right. Apologies for that. So thanks for the introduction there, Mark. So Steve Williams from Komatsu Australia. So looking at the earth moving machinery side of the fence, using a lot of the telematics data. So I look after some of the ICT stuff, plus also some of the other areas of digital as well with Komatsu as well. So today, wanted to go through a bit about when we're talking about data and using those telematics is a lot about the why. Is starting with that. Why are we trying to have a look at some of these things before we go into the where we've been, where we're going with some of this kind of stuff, but focusing mostly on what are we actually trying to do? Use data to do what? So how can we try and create extra value for our organizations? So the why kind of is relatively simple. We're trying to make a systems that we all have to run work for us and not us work for the system per se. So it's about trying to add more data or more value to the data sets that we get back from machinery, from our fleets of vehicles, etc., which allows us, by having all this value in these data sets and exposing that to us, we as the humans get to add more value to our organizations and make sure that those machines or vehicles are working in tip-top shape and providing as much utilization and output as required. Now, something that I've touched on in some of the previous discussions, I think it was last year, is talking about moving from data, which is our raw and unprocessed facts, up to information, which is where we're starting to organize and structure and add context to the data about the who, the what, the where, and the when, to be able to start adding a little bit more value. Moving up then to knowledge, which is where we start to analyze and interpret that information, the how and the why, before finally the most valuable aspect of this is then taking steps to achieve an outcome of actually, what am I going to do about this? Now, the challenge is that we have lots of the stuff at the bottom, lots of data, but the value comes at the top. And as well, the simplest aspect is capturing the data, but it takes a lot more time and experience to create those actions. You know, we are all in the fleet management areas. We've got a lot of experience in many cases. And as Mark pointed out about trying to, leveraging the information and experience of everyone on the call and throughout the organizations across the country to really try and move up to those higher tiers, which are challenging, but is where the value comes in. If you look at where we've been, a little bit of a recap here, it'll only take a minute or two from the previous stuff we've gone through. As Komatsu and even through what we've seen with our customers and organizations around the world, we've come from areas where we've had quite siloed information, where we're looking at, back 5-10 years ago, even in some cases, some of the small organizations today, using things like whiteboards to manage and understand what's going on with individual machines at any point in time. What we might term as offline mode, where it's quick and easy to get started, but it's really difficult to kind of share that across an organization, particularly when you might be geographically sparse or spread out. Now, then we start to see people taking steps forward where we start to get on the digital journey. Of course, everyone's favorite friend of Microsoft Excel comes in handy here, where we start on the digital journey. We can start sharing that around. Scalability becomes a challenge, and making sure everything's up to date, of course, as well. But it's really where we start joining the data sets together, which is what we've just noted there with some of the dashboards that looks like Mark and FleetYr are playing with there at the moment, is where we start joining together across all the data sets around machinery, or equally so around vehicles, to really get a better understanding of what's going on around a piece of fleet, to then be able to understand what's going on and work out what might need to be done to either get more out of the asset or make sure it is still working in its tip-top shape. So what Komatsu Australia has been doing is, over the last 10 years, is collating all this information into one location around basic model and serial number information, or location, or how's its health doing with fluid samples or abnormality codes coming back from telemetry, maintenance, etc., to get all of that together into one place, to then make it much easier to digest into things like reports, is where we started about 10 years ago. But at the end of the day, we're trying to take the amount of time, or we started with trying to take the amount of time it would take to collate that information and make it quicker. So we spend less time preparing, more time analyzing and looking at what we need to do. And when we surveyed our internal teams, it went from about 45 minutes to get that full picture down to about 60 seconds. We could then spend more time actually looking at what's going on to prepare ourselves if we're going out to service a machine or whatever the case may be. It was that understanding of the 360-degree operation and behavior of the individual machine or piece of fleet, which allowed us to get more context about what was going on with the machine, which would allow the human to start thinking about what actions may need to be taken. Now, where we are, so 2 years ago, we released a fleet management tool that's now freely available to the customers who own Komatsu machinery as part of our My Komatsu suite. Just a quick screen recording there as it goes through and looks at some of our rental machinery. So this is Komatsu rental machines, which some of you on the call may have. Goes through and looks at that understanding of all the different areas of an individual machine, see how much it's been working, what health events have been going on recently, which might need some attention, and also providing some benchmarking, which is what I'm going to touch on in a moment on one of the next slides, to, as Mark was noting there, about trying to understand where do I fit in against my peers to help benchmark and see where there are opportunities which may need to be addressed to make improvements, or just understand and make sure that things are working how and where we want to be working in that space. It's about essentially unlocking this data and making it easily accessible to those who can create value with it, like us on the call as fleet managers, and trying to pre-process some of that as well into information, away from data up into information, and then also through to actions where we can. As I said, it's the higher you go in that pyramid, the more challenging or time consuming it is to create it, but it's where a lot of the value comes in. So let's move away from kind of where we've been, where we're going, and look at what are we trying to do? We're trying to use data to do something. We want to get some value out of this, the vehicles, the machinery that we've got in our fleets. First things first is one of the main ones is always just trying to simplify a task. Try and get access to something a little bit quicker and easier so that we can do something that just needs to be done. You know, in some cases, this might be looking at where the machine or vehicle has been and tracking where that has been over time. So this is, again, looking at some of our Komatsu rental machines. This grader's been on a little bit of a road trip of late and has come, that would be quite a few hundred kilometres from way out on the western border of Queensland all the way up through back to our Cairns branch at the moment. We can kind of see as that's gone through as things might be moving around, but even as you're looking at an individual local government area, can see which days it's been where, etc. Common things that we go through, right? Along with that, looking at when it has been working to pair the two together, to have a look at when and where have we been working. Might have been, in this case, looking at a grader, regrading a road or something like that, to see which bits have been done and which bits may not need some attention into the future. Then we go into another aspect, which is using data to plan our future tasks. Machinery and vehicles need to be maintained at the end of the day to make sure they're in tip-top shape. And so it's one of these things, the further we can look into the future to plan, the better we're going to be able to make sure that we've got all of, as an example, the right parts, the people and skills available when they're needed to do it, and make sure that we've got the downtime planned and we're not trying to put a vehicle or something like that onto a specific job and then noting that we're going to have to travel out and get that maintained. So something we've been working on here is trying to get our customers to look up a little bit, look forward, rather than just planning the next day or 2 or 3 days. Is trying to look forward and plan out what might be due in the coming days, weeks, and months, to then be able to plan those in, and where they're using us for service, we can make sure we're available on the days that are needed as well. So just trying to bring the gaze up a little bit and look a little bit further into the future to make sure that we're not double booking, etc. One of the biggest aspects we've looked at here is about trying to start the conversations, using data to look at where there might be something that needs to be looked at as a point of comparison. Again, looking at a grader, this one here is actually for a customer over the ditch in New Zealand. Got a fleet of a couple of graders there. And looking here at this individual machine, and specifically at the fuel rate here, which I'll just blow up to be a little bit larger there. So looking here at litres per hour, how many litres per hour are we burning in this grader? The blue columns in the background is how much this individual machine's been burning on a day, with the light blue line being a benchmark across all of the other, in this case, GD655-7 graders from Komatsu, against all of the other ones within Komatsu Australia's territory of Australia, New Zealand, New Caledonia, and also now Papua New Guinea as well. So providing that benchmark, and we can see here this machine's actually burning about almost double what its peers are doing. So the average there about 12 litres an hour. This one's burning almost up to 25 litres per hour on some individual days. Now, trying to leverage those together highlights opportunities where there might be process improvements or something that might be able to go through. Now, one of the things that when we discussed some of this I was discussing with a customer actually down in Tasmania, not about a specific grader here, but in general about a machine, the fact that we started to have the conversation is what that customer was really excited about. They were in a quarry application, had a variety of machines, and with we had a bit of a discussion and people were throwing in ideas as to why fuel rates might be higher, etc. And one of the managers in the operation said, look, it doesn't matter what the solution is. The fact that we're having the conversation now, that is the important part, because now we're aware of it and we can think about and hypothesize why it might be. Just because it's high, it doesn't mean it's necessarily a problem either. At the end of the day, low idle times, if you're using the machine heavily, you're going to burn more fuel, but you're also going to be more productive at the same time. Another aspect there is, again, around trying to start conversations, is now actually benchmarking just your machines in a fleet or vehicles or whatever the case may be against each other, something we commonly do. Of course, then looking and trying to compare those against benchmarks as well. In this case here, looking at average fuel rates against working hours. So how much time you're actually spending working as opposed to just having the engine running. We would always typically see that a machine with less idle time is going to burn more fuel, and that's largely correlating against this customer's fleet, in this case of larger wheel loaders. When we start to look at the engine on time versus the idling time, we start to see a couple of little outliers where we're almost double the average idle time here of approaching 40%, which is an air conditioner on four wheels for 40% of the time. So trying to look at those and understand how we might be trying to understand that operation to run through things, and comparing them together. Different doesn't mean a problem. Different can mean a different application, a different operation, different maintenance requirements that might be required. But it's that prompt to start another conversation, or even start the conversation around why might we be seeing different behavior from different pieces of fleet. And then more importantly, what does that mean in terms of the actions that we might need to start doing differently with an individual machine, depending on that application. Finally, something that I raised during the Brisbane conference earlier this year was trying to think about, right, well, how do we start to create the value from the systems and data sets that we have available to us? Thinking about what data do we have, how is it stored, where is it stored, when does it change or how does it update, how often does it update, who is it valuable to, why is it valuable, and how could it create more value is really what it comes down to. And we've just gone through a few little applications there of using data to do things. And it really, that flow is what I'm trying to instill in a lot of the digital applications that we build for us internally as Komatsu, but also those for our customers, like we've just touched on there, to make sure that we can get the most out of our fleets, and specifically the data that comes back from those fleets to back and enhance those fleets of vehicles and machinery. So in recap, the why is about trying to add more value to the data and to our organization. We've been on a journey over the last 10 years as an industry, or even longer in many cases, as we've progressed to digital platforms and integrating data sets together to then use data to simplify tasks, improve planning, and start conversations of way we may be able to improve the operation and application of our fleets of machinery and vehicles. That's all I wanted to cover for today. Thanks for your time. Back to you, Mark.
Thanks, Steve. Like, I really love